Hello, everyone. Welcome to the VR Gamescast, live every Thursday, except we were not on the past 2 weeks, and we sincerely apologize for that. But we're here now. It's about the here and now. I am Zeena. I'm going to be your host for today, and joining me is Hamilton, Ian Hamilton,
the Viking King.
Oh. Yes. Are you talking about my James Bond? James Bond. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm here. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Yes, I will talk about spy thrillers in VR.
Also joining us this week is Captain Feltham-Head, or you can call him Jamie for short.
All right. Why is this thing still going on with the Quest 2 where it sometimes loses tracking in the Guardian? And it says headset tracking lost. It goes black, and then it reboots, and then it does it again, and you have to spend about 10 minutes going through that circus before. Why is this thing still so buggy? Why?
Did you wipe off your lenses? You got dirty lenses?
Nothing. My lenses are fine. I protect them at all times. Like this. I play VR like this with my hands over the lenses, so they're fine.
Do you play in total darkness?
That could be it. That could be it.
Yeah. Okay, so once again, that's what grinds Jamie's gears about the Oculus Quest.
Every Thursday except every other Thursday.
Yeah, that's true.
Pretty much.
We're real regulars around here.
Every other Thursday. By this point. All right, so of course we are not alone. Hello to everyone in chat. Let's do some shout outs. Adam Hartzell, the absolute boy. Jacob Falk, Skiva, Opzar, Opt1 My Sticks, Onikazi, like we said, what up? Maple Wonder, Michael C. Statue, Meow Meow the Gamer Cat, Lucky Do. All of you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're very, very happy to have you.
We're thankful for you.
Meow Meow the Gamer Cat, that's the best YouTube name I've seen.
It's cute. I think they got the best, one of the best gamer cat names for sure. And if you're tuning in via one of your favorite streaming services after this is live, we are very happy for you to be joining us as well. Thank you.
We're not going to read your names off though. That'll take too long.
We're going to hack into your systems. A special shout out to our members, which include Devin Miller, Matthew May, Rick Tett, Robert Quinones, Steve Evans, Smash Reality, Adam Hartzell, John Westra, and Dominique Fruchtman. Thank you so much for supporting us week after week, month after month. If you want to support us, have a think about it. Become a member.
We have another game cat. Look at that. Serial Killer, the Cinnamon Toast Crunch game cat.
The game cats are the
Meow
PSVR
Meow.
Without Parole crowd.
Oh.
Our friends over at PSVR Pro, they call themselves the Game Cats because they love the cats. And they do the streams with the cats in the background. Very cute.
Mm-hmm. They're great guys. Go check them out. They are wonderful to watch if you like PSVR. If you just want to support us on a very, just to here and now kind of basis, there's Super Chat. We will give it special attention if you do a Super Chat. Any amount is fine.
You can buy a T-shirt as well right below us. Not here, but like further. Like I'm breaking the fourth wall. Look below the YouTube box right now, and you should see T-shirts. They say upload, and they're very attractive. That's all I know.
They're lovely. Yeah. There's no reason why there's a price difference between them. I don't know. It's the platform. Anyway,
I don't know how T-shirts
we
work.
have got a couple of news stories to get through before we talk about which VR games are making our Game of the Year list so far. Then we'll pass it on over to Ian to talk about I Expect You to Die Too, and then to Jamie to talk about Captain Toonhead and A Township Tale. All right, let's get into it. We've had quite a few new VR games crop up this week. So we're just going to kind of list through them and talk about whether or not we're kind of into it. So first up is Shadowgate VR for Quest. Shadowgate is apparently a fantasy series that first debuted on Macintosh PCs in 1987. In this VR version, though, you'll be exploring the caverns within mountains and casting spells using a wand to take on ghoulish enemies. This one is looking pretty standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's looking pretty standard. Nothing to stand out. However, I am getting Ian vibes from this.
Have you seen any of this yet?
Do you know what?
I looked at it briefly and kind of
Shadowgate is.
Yeah, I saw it in my email at least. And,
so you hadn't heard of it beforehand, like the Shadowgate franchise? Oh, I've never heard of it.
No, I was like, 1980s. What are they talking about here? And that was about where my research ended.
It kind of like it looked like one of those games that you might have like had in your school classroom that you'd get to play like 5 minutes of if you'd been good that day. Where it was like,
oh my god, that's so true. Like,
it really, really weird.
The Microsoft Encyclopedia. What's it called?
Oh, I know what you mean, but I can't. I'm not going to spend 5 minutes trying to think of what it was called.
Oh, those were some great games from the 90s that the Encyclopedia had. But that is exactly what it kind of feels like. So yeah, we'll see. We'll
it's
see
a weird thing because it's like it does have that heritage behind it, and I think the developer has been working on it, the series, the entire time. So getting on for 30 years or whatever.
Oh wow!
But
really?
I mean, you said standard, and I do think that's exactly it, right? Like it's kind of this mix of.
I thought you were going to call me really harsh.
No. It's. I think you hit the nail on the head. It looks like this mix of Walter the Wizard, Crystal Rift. Any
cast
kind
spells.
of like.
We've done it.
So yeah, and
it's they all look like that.
Yeah, you're kind of working with the limited power of the quest, aren't you? But
no, as in like the shields that all of these games have, all look exactly the same, like with the kind of various triangles and such.
It's interesting to see like all these developers arriving at the same kind of like conceits to make VR work. So like the one where like your sword shatters because you don't have any physical feedback. Like that's an idea that's catching on. And then you've got like a shield that isn't physically there. So you've got your mind accepts that there's no haptic feedback when things hit it.
Rather than doing the whole Captain America thing.
But, just ricocheting it off the walls in the mountains. Anyway, let's move on from that game because no one's really
Zeena
heard of it.
It.
I don't.
Zeena's already decided that one's an avoid. Sorry, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Next up is End Effectors, a sci-fi roguelite. In this game, you face an army of robots armed with a gun and a shield. This is apparently going to have some online co-op support, and the developers said they're trying to set this game apart with great enemy variety, which I hope... I'm going to be a bit harsh here. I hope it means something, because they all kind of look the same here.
I actually, as I was watching it, I actually thought...
Are you done with VR? You've just seen it all? That's it?
No, okay, so when we get into the Game of the Year chat, we'll get onto the kind of subject of how this year's been going as well.
Yeah.
VR-wise.
Well, he threw a grenade instead of a blaster. Oh no, then he shot with a blaster. This one looks a lot like we've been talking about Sweet Surrender as well. This looks pretty much exactly like Sweet Surrender, so it's kind of funny they're coming out at the same time. I actually noticed a day after this was put on Reddit, the Sweet Surrender guys actually had a new post looking at the physics of the game. I thought, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I think the cool thing about this will be the online co-op.
Yes, exactly.
If they can make that fun, two people going through a roguelite campaign together, that could be something pretty special. But it's kind of similar to what we were just saying with Shadowgate. We have one genre where everything's kind of starting to look a bit samey and dungeon crawly, and now we're kind of getting this sci-fi shooter genre where we've seen this quite a lot at this point.
Especially with the kind of comic-y look, right? It has that kind of toon shader sort of
and again that's it's a whole quest thing, isn't it? We've got to get this thing running on the quest, and what's the best artistic choices to make sure that happens. Plus, I think this is just a tiny 2-man team, this one, so
again, like you said, the co-op support will definitely be the thing driving this into the masses. So yeah, moving on from that, this next one's interesting. There's also Jurassic Snap, which is essentially Pokemon Snap, but with dinosaurs in VR. That's all I've
like
kind
this.
of. Yeah, let's have a little look at this.
I'm casting. If it's going to cast, there it is.
There we go.
You got a little. You're on a on rails path, just like in Pokemon Snap. If you never played Pokemon Snap, it's literally a game about taking pictures of Pokemon. Except this time it's dinosaurs, and then you can kind of like influence the way the dinosaurs react to the world by like throwing food at them and stuff like that. I remember like early on, everyone used to say, "Oh, Pokemon Snap would be a great VR game," and of course, we've had a Pokemon Snap sequel that obviously doesn't have any proper VR support because it's on the Switch. So
oh my god, it's literally Pokemon.
I think this looks pretty cool. It's on Kickstarter
really
right now. Yeah, it does look very cute, doesn't it? I don't know. I think that's a pretty cool idea for a game, and it's nice to see something a bit different in terms of the genres that VR's speaking to right now. So that's on Kickstarter if you want to go look. I'm not sure it's had the best Kickstarter launch so far. I think it's like a couple of grand, and it wants tens of grands, but maybe go anyway. So we'll probably never hear about it again. Go give it a look.
If you're interested in that, go give it a little look. Ian, you're not interested in it, or are you
oh no, that actually looks like a really good idea. I like that idea. It's funny to me how much it's aping Pokemon Snap. I mean, it is exactly Pokemon Snap down to everything, but it's still, yeah, it's a good fit for an idea for VR. And I'm just laughing at Jamie's tens of grands thing.
It's what you got to do with no Nintendo in the VR game, though. You literally just have to steal their ideas straight up and hope they don't sue you, because that's the closest we're going to get for now.
Just like that Pokemon spin-off on SideQuest, which unfortunately
which is now turned into like an NFT thing.
Yeah, that's kind of it's just kind of gone, hasn't it?
It does sort of make me hope that Nintendo's going to surprise us all with a Nintendo VR standalone. It's so funny, like they had the cardboard headset and they did all those VR versions of their games, and they did support VR. I mean, they have done it, and then I recently tried a Virtual Boy from the 90s. Like, of all the game companies, they actually shipped real VR hardware back in their history. So like they've got a lot of things that put them in place. It's just, I don't know. We're years and years into this now. And we're all so jaded that it's ever going to happen. But like again, Pokemon Snap on a standalone Switch, like it could really work.
You know what?
Yeah.
I don't want Nintendo VR. I don't want it. They're not good with hardware, really. Nowadays, lots of the Switch kind of hardware is just not.
Oh, you're just mad about the Joy-Cons. That's all you're just gonna like.
Actually, and my Switch is actually with Nintendo for repair right now. So
for the second
just
time,
doesn't turn on anymore.
The second time this has happened. So, they're not doing too hot with their hardware. So I think I wouldn't go for it, to be honest. Even if they did have it.
They are a company that tries to ignore the current trend of the big boys, Xbox and Microsoft and Sony, and VR is kind of one of those trends. And they did try it with what was it called, the Labo thing, but you get the sense that maybe the reactions to that weren't quite what they were hoping for, and so maybe they're going to distance themselves from it for a bit because of that, right?
I don't know. We'll see. It's so interesting the way the Switch was targeted, like hardware wise. Like, it's a low powered system, and they've gotten an incredible number of games built for it. If you dual eye and add the right amount of hardware to that, maybe they could power a VR system more than it seems like easier to bring up the Switch games to VR rather than take PC games with the Steam route down to VR, the Steam handheld. Like we were all talking about how hard it's going to be to bring those PC VR games down to the standalone hardware they're going to need for that. I think it's going to be easier for Nintendo to take take all of its Switch games up, or whatever selection is appropriate for VR.
Yep. So before we get on to the last new kind of game announcement here, I just want to read out some comments. So Paradise DK thinks that Shadowgate has a cult following. So a lot of cultists are on VR, so I think it might do well.
The cult of VR, very kind of very excited.
Culty platform, isn't it? Wolf Rosara, sorry, I really messed up that name. I'm not going to try and correct it. Says Stones of Harleth is actually one of the most unique games I have played yet. That's in response also to the Shadow game. Some of you guys are totally into the dinosaur snap game. Skiva says Mario Kart VR is my dream. So people are really into the idea of Nintendo VR here.
And the arcade Mario Kart experience was really, really good, really fun.
Yep. And Opzar makes a great point of Nintendo might never commit to VR because it affects eyesight development in younger kids. That is a great point. So finally, the last game. Sorry, go for it.
Is that an official thing? Do you know about that? Is that a well-researched point that the Nintendo wouldn't commit to it because how it affects eyesight development?
No, I think that's sort of reading a little bit into the warning that they put on all the VR headsets.
Yeah.
That it is 13 and over, and one of the theories out there, one of the concerns is that it could, the eyes are still developing in children, and the IPDs are so different from adults. It's more like an open question of whether it's appropriate for children. And I honestly, I kind of get the impression the research is being done, but it's not being released. Perhaps by the corporations involved, but it's more like I don't think it's a proven fact yet. I don't think there's enough research that's been published to show that yet.
Yeah, I definitely feel that's enough for Nintendo to kind of step back, put their hands up and say,
I
am not touching this.
Yeah, I agree with Opsar that it would be enough of a concern for them to be like, further research needed. But
so this final game that was announced, or update to a game really, is Space Pirate Trainer DX. It's an expanded version of Space Pirate Trainer, and I keep wanting to say Spice, and it's coming in September. They're going to be raising the price of the original game by about $10, and the reason for this is because they're adding a versus mode to the classic game, and it's also going to have an arena scale version, which needs you to have at least 10 by 10 meters to play with. Ian, you reported on this, and you've even tried it out.
Yeah,
can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, so I went outside last night and tried to make a large enough guardian on the lawn outside my apartment complex to make this possible. First, I went to the playground that's in my apartment complex to see if it looked like the ground was flatter in the playground there. And that wasn't, I made it as large as I possibly could, and this is what I came up with. Let's see if I've got it here.
To be one of Ian's neighbors looking outside the window last night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm standing out there with two Quest headsets in my hand, with my kids holding one headset. I'm here standing with the other headset, and they're like, they both want to be back at the house watching, Pokemon cartoons, but I've got Space Pirate Trainer DX on my Quest. I'm the only people in the world right now with access to that. I'm gonna go try it out. All right, so this is the Guardian I drew in the playground area, and you can see the yellow line could not even come close. And then I went over to another area of this lawn, and I drew the Guardian as large as I possibly could. And I think there might have been one dimension of the Guardian that I probably could have expanded to get it beyond the 10 meter by 10 meter limit. I'm a little confused because I thought I could draw it way beyond the borders of the 10 meters. It seemed like the Guardian was stopping me almost exactly at the lines that is required by Arena, and that's kind of scary. I reported and had this sort of exclusively earlier this summer that Facebook was going up to, I think, 15 by 15 meters with the Quest 2 hardware, and you could have this just ridiculously large square meters for your Quest Guardian. And when I went out and tried this out on the lawn, and this game is going to be like the what's the term for filmmaking golden hour, when the sun sets just slightly low to the horizon and the lighting is just perfect. This game is going to be the game that makes people come out of their homes and play at that hour, because the sun isn't hitting your Quest directly. There's still enough light out for the Quest to track features in the environment. But to be clear, this game is meant to be played indoors. You're supposed to play it indoors for safety reasons. Lots of things can come into your play space if you're outdoors, and obviously the features of your environment could move around quite a bit more outdoors than indoors. So that could just cause lots of scary things to happen if you're outdoors. So it's highly recommended to actually play this game indoors. Yeah, and to be clear, they've got a versus mode where it's just you against another player. And when you shoot down a drone appears for the other player, and I think vice versa. And that's how you kind of battle it out. It reminds me very much of the very old Tetris way of throwing trash at the other player by adding lines of trash to their Tetris screen, and they throw trash into your Tetris screen. And I was joking, I was mentioning this on Twitter, that I always think of Space Pirate Trainer as this game that's very much the embodiment of 30 years of progress in VR in game design. So if you look at Space Pirate Trainer, you can easily see Galaga and Space Invaders from the 1970s and 80s, the very first arcade games that were ever around with these aliens coming down your screen. And in different patterns. That's exactly what happens in Space Pirate Trainer. You've got these waves of drones flying in different patterns at you. And now when you see these new levels on Space Pirate Arena, they're very much, they look to me like, let's see if we've got one here. Is this one of them? They very much remind me of Quake or Unreal Tournament maps. And I love that. I get this super solid feeling of this is going to be the multiplayer kind of mark in the sand of just where we are in VR development, as we've got it's still, when you talk about arenas, this is still kind of a small arena. This isn't warehouse scale. This is large, and it's very larger than most houses, but there's still when you play a game of paintball, you sometimes play that in a very large open field. And that's not where we are yet with this arena scale. It's still large, but it's not that large. So I'm just so excited to get into this, and we'll have a lot more on this very soon.
Yeah, loads of people seem to be excited in it. Go for it, Jamie.
Do you think the adding it to the original game and then expanding the price of the original game, do you think that's an elegant solution? Because obviously a year ago, I think we were all how are they going to release this?
Yep. I think it's a beautiful solution, and it's part of a trend that I'm pursuing to figure out exactly what's going to happen here. To reiterate for some of the people at home that haven't been following, I think the first game that I noticed do this was Waltz of the Wizard Natural Magic. That's now officially the name of the game, is Waltz of the Wizard Natural Magic. They changed the name of the game, and they upped the price, and they added this huge new area and a single player campaign for you to go out and try to get through a procedurally generated level system. And it's still being worked on. They're still expanding and adding new pieces to this natural magic thing. And of course, Waltz the Wizard was one of the first games to offer hand tracking throughout the entire experience. And when they added this new natural magic update to it, the new parts don't have hand tracking yet. So they're still working on implementing hand tracking in the new parts. But the whole previous game, you can go and still do hand tracking throughout the entire experience. And then, of course, Pistol Whip a couple weeks ago or a week ago now did the same thing, where they added the Smoke and Thunder campaign, they added the new modifier system, and they upped the price of the game with that update. And now we've got this third example here of Space Pirate Trainer DX doing the exact same thing. And to be clear, all three of these developers, what they did was they gave buyers a couple weeks to say, to know, hey, the price is going up on this date. So it's like a reverse sale where they say, hey, look, you've actually got a chance here for a good period of time to go get the game, the entire game, and the update that's coming for the lower price. And it's just such a great goodwill driving way of communicating with consumers to let them know, hey, the price is going up on this date. Everyone gets all the new content. People who are early adopting buyers get the original feature. It's very much what the strategy that happened over on Steam with early access, where a fair number of developers put their game out at a certain price on early access, and then as soon as they graduate from early access, they change the price to like a retail kind of priced version of the game. And what happens is all the early buyers get all the new content for free, and all the new buyers are brought in at this, like, they get to see this bigger product realize. And it's just amazing to me seeing this kind of like homegrown, developer-grown way of communicating with your buyers and getting these products out to so many people without dividing up the community. As Pistol Whip developers explained it to us, you can go check out the interview with Joel Green, the project lead of Pistol Whip, where he explained with that game, they've added like dozens of songs since the original 10-song release. And by not releasing that stuff as DLC, they don't have this situation where some people go and get the game and don't have the songs that their friends have and have to spend $5 more to like compete for a spot on the top list with their best friend. Everyone is in the same pool of people. Everyone gets the same amount of content. There's the same amount of leaderboards. And then all these developers, if they do well with their sales, they all get to build a bigger game with more people working on it for the future, and everyone wins, it seems.
So there's actually 4 games that have done that. Is it Box VR?
Oh, well, Box VR did a different thing. It changed to
they kind of rebranded,
and then it went free with a subscription, which is kind of similar. I was also going to say that actually in an interview I did with Jesse Shell from Shell Games last week, he was talking about the fact that just adding free content to the First I Expect You to Die meant they didn't have to cut the price, which is what you do traditionally do in a game. So it's the same thing. It's not, picking up the price, but actually for 5 years now, that game's managed to sell pretty consistently across the board at the price it's always been, which is, again, something that's kind of unheard of.
So I'm looking at the comments here with some pretty specific questions about Space Pirate Trainer Arena, or Space Pirate Trainer DX is the official name. So to be clear for everyone that might have been a little confused there, the same game, Space Pirate Trainer, that has been on Quest since launch, is going to change names to become Space Pirate Trainer DX, and everyone who bought that on Quest is going to get the new game for free. So you're going to log in early September on the date. I think it's September 9th. And the game is just going to switch over, have a massive update. I think the game is like doubling in size based on the gigabytes it took up on my Quest. It's huge how much is getting added to the game. So everyone that bought the game is getting that, and then the price will flip over from being $15 to $25 for all the new buyers getting into it on that day. And in this DX version of the game, you're getting versus mode, which is 1v1 with the trash style system where you shoot down a drone, it gets thrown over to your competitor. They shoot down a drone, it gets thrown over to you. And then, of course, there's also the arena mode in there in the same game. And that is, you can activate that if you have a 10 meter by 10 meter play space or larger. So you have to have the absolute largest Guardian possible. You should play it indoors because that's the safest, controlled lighting way to play. Last night when I was trying it, the lighting started to go down and the tracking started to go wonky. You want to control your lighting so you've got a great experience there. And
someone asked if it's on PSVR as well.
No. The update is literally just for Quest because it's the only wireless one to do it.
Yep. So the arena mode can be played. Another question I saw there, in co-located same space play with another player, and I have yet to really get this up and running or try it, but there's some way to sync up your two play spaces with you and another person and their guardian, and you both share run around each other, basically around this arena, to make sure you chase each other exactly like a game of laser tag or paintball. But you can also play it online with your friend who's far away in another 10 meter by 10 meter play space somewhere online. Or you could suppose you could also do it like side by side, where you've got a 10 meter by 10 meter space and your friend has a 10 meter by 10 meter space. And there's also a single player mode. So if you go into this mode and only have one headset, you could compete against like a drone running around the arena on your own.
It is pretty incredible to think about. I think the only thing to say in terms of like, I agree that it's giving people that heads up is a great goodwill move and everything. It's kind of a shame in this sense because not everyone's going to get to take advantage of the arena mode, So the price is increasing for something that some people will never get to be able to use. That's just like the
they're
one
also
caveat
getting they're also getting verses.
Yeah, sure, but it's not the full breadth of content that's the game's increasing in price for. It's like there's only a very slim section of users that's ever going to be able to use the arena mode. Like I'm probably, unless we go rent out a football pitch somewhere, we're not going to do it.
But I mean, like, who's that harming? That the only person that's harming is someone who wants to go buy the game new, and like they're going to be clear in the description about what you're getting. So like, don't buy it, right? Don't buy it if that's not your game at the new price.
I'm just kind of nitpicking in terms of like how it works compared to the other games. It's not like everyone's getting content that everyone can use. That's what I'm saying.
It's probably a very easy like arcade solution as well, especially as our VR arcades are opening up. I think that's going to be amazing for arcades. Like if you can't do it at home, you can just pop into one. There are so many.
I can see two people online in different spaces, in different 10-meter spaces. Again, as rare as that would be, I can see that being one of the most powerful and strange things you could do in VR.
Or like, even in the same space, like when we played Pac-Man.
One ran into each other a bunch of times.
You just have to not run.
Yeah, that's true.
The thing that I've been thinking about when we talked about Space Pirate Trainer DX previously, when we knew Arena Mode was coming, a lot of people in our comments were like, who is going to play this? And I get that concern, but I still want to say, in my head, this still seems like it could be one day a larger market than paintball and laser tag itself. Yeah. So you've got like, think about the cost of a paintball system, right? You've got to go and constantly buy the actual physical paintballs that you feed into your thing. You've got to get the mask. You've got to get the guns, the CO2 cartridges to power the guns. There's a lot of equipment required to make paintball a sport. And here, all you need is a VR headset. So $300 is your starting entry point to be able to go and play this. And yes, you need the 10 meter by 10 meter space, but the same is true of laser tag and paintball. It's still years away, but it still strikes me as potentially a larger market than those other sports.
Yeah. I would also give a shout out to T for God, which does the whole kind of walking thing, but with like kind of impossible corridor concept of once you round a corner, it's an entirely different space to what it was a second ago. So if you kind of want it, if you want that kind of, you can fit it in a normal Quest Guardian space. If you still kind of want that experience, that's on side quest somewhere. That's definitely worth seeking out.
Cool. Shall we move on from this? Well, we kind of touched on this next news item, which was Until You Fall getting DLC, but only when the market is right. So as Jamie mentioned earlier, he interviewed Jesse Schell, of Shell Games about Until You Fall, and he said that the game was actually designed to be expandable, to have DLC. But they were kind of weighing it up between, should we give DLC for free or should we do like a new game, because the game wasn't through the roof successful. And you can see this whole interview with Jesse Shell on UploadVR.com within the next couple of days, right, Jamie?
Yeah, tomorrow is when I'm putting up the whole interview. It's good we put this in there because this actually kind of builds on literally what we've been talking about these past couple of minutes, that they said Until You Fall has been successful, not as successful I expect as I Expect You to Die has been. And people, the last time I spoke to Shell Games about 3 or 4 months ago, everyone wanted me to ask about more Until You Fall, which was, I thought it was just like a done thing. I didn't think we were going to see more. And he was very enthusiastic about the idea. He was like, yeah, we've got more content. He said they've looked at the market, and this was interesting. He said they've looked at the market, and for this type of game in VR, in terms of roguelites and everything, and action games and everything like that, when you release a free update, you might see a little spike in sales, you might see a little spike in interest, but that'll peter out again in the next couple of weeks or whatever. Which is interesting from their perspective, because I Expect You to Die had like phenomenal long-term free support with extra levels over the years. But he said that for this genre, that doesn't seem to work. And he said that this has to be a paid thing. So I wonder if they'll go that route too, of expanding the price by $5 or $10 in the next year or so, and then start to introduce those expansions. Now that we've mentioned it, I think that would be a really cool thing to see, specifically for this title. Because I love Until You Fall. I think it's super fun. And Jesse Shell says in this interview, he's like, I'm not just saying this because I worked on it, but it's like my favorite VR game of all time. And I can totally see why. I still play it. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and I hope to see it soon, because I would totally jump into another set of dungeons in this game, and I'm sure lots of other people would as well.
Is your quote about the mechanics of Until You Fall in that giant shell piece, the literally the moving your arms thing?
Yeah, that'll be in there.
It's an amazing quote. Definitely read Jamie's story when he publishes this, because Jesse Shell and Shell Games in general, they're this developer you really need to listen to intently, because Jesse Shell is literally a teacher of game design, very popular at sort of the game developer conferences. And when he sort of breaks down why they make the games the way they do, it's very, very smart to listen to this person, because they just have thought so deeply about mechanics in VR. And there's something really, really interesting in this story about the mechanics of being telegraphed where you're moving your hands in expectation of where you're moving things, and how that produces like a haptic effect in your head for getting your arm in the right place.
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's an interesting read, hopefully, when it goes out tomorrow. What were you going to say, sorry, Z?
Do you include like the origins, like the video we were watching the other day?
The Disney Quest stuff. Yeah, we talk a bit about Disney Quest. Yeah, we talk about a bit about Disney Quest. Some of the like starting origins of Shell Games, like back in the 2000s, leading up to when VR started, and like what got them on the path to making I Expect You to Die, leading right up to the release of the sequel earlier this week, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Cool. You cannot miss this interview. It's going to be on UploadVR.com, as are all of these stories. But yeah, that's enough of news. We've had enough of news. Now we're going to get on to the Game of the Year discussion. Obviously, there are so many other VR games yet to come out, but we were thinking about how this year has gone so far, and, you know, which games would actually make our lists. So, which one of you two would like to kick off this discussion? Or just kind of listing off your fave games. Jamie?
Yeah, so I wrote a couple of months ago, I like summed up all the games that have got like 5 or 4 stars at Upload so far, and I think there's like maybe
I got the
10.
list here.
Oh, okay. Well, I think there's like maybe 10 of them this year so far, which isn't too bad. But I think for
12.
me, it's 12. Well, that's pretty good. It's going to be
chickens.
It's going to be an interest. There's an in joke. It's going to be an interesting debate this year because we've talked about how it hasn't been a really massive standout year for VR content so far. Or it doesn't really feel like it has. There's been a lot of fun stuff, but not a lot of groundbreaking stuff. And I think if we talk about the groundbreaking stuff, which is what you should consider for a game of the year, I know you two and myself will definitely want to talk about Demio, but that's probably what's going to dominate a lot of the conversation. I'd like to throw a shout out to a couple of games like Larcenauts. It's something that is such a controversial pick, I think, because it did that. You see this so often in gaming where a multiplayer game launches and there's like some starting hiccups. In this case, it was a pretty big starting hiccup of the game literally didn't work on some Steam VR headsets. But it kind of set this unfortunate narrative in motion that the game wasn't ready. And I actually don't think that was true at all of Larcenauts. I think there was a lot of really fun, great content in that game that kept me coming back more and more. And it's one of those games that maybe in terms of VR design isn't like at the forefront. Like it isn't a Walking Dead or a Boneworks or an Alex or something like that. But it is a rock solid translation of one of the most popular gaming genres out there at the moment into VR in a very seamless and native feeling way. So all of the different heroes you get in this hero shooter are very much like they all have mechanics that work in the context of the medium. They don't feel uncomfortable or they're not awkward to get right or anything like that. And it creates a shooter with like actual genuine depth. It's my favorite thing that's my favorite thing about Larcenauts is these kinds of shooters are hard to get into at the end of the day, but play a couple of rounds of this, just try some of the different characters, and you can immediately see how they kind of slot into the overall puzzle that makes up Larcenauts. And I just think it's a remarkably well-balanced game, and I hope we get to see some sort of, I guess, redemption story about it as time moves on, and we hopefully see some more characters introduced to the game and some more mechanics and levels and everything like that. Because I think Impulse Gear are a great developer. I think they think long and hard about how to make shooters work in VR. And even though I didn't give it as high a score as Demio, I think by the end of the year, I could see myself seriously considering leaning that way with my personal pick.
Would you do a follow up on your review then?
Yeah, I think so because there's a roadmap out there. That's going to last until the end of 2021, and it will be a different game by then. There will be new pieces to that puzzle to include, see how they fit in, and some of the big complaints that were there early on about like running and reloading, those have now been entirely fixed. So I definitely think it's going to be worth revisiting. Much like we're planning to revisit Stride once there's actually a story campaign in there and everything like that.
Larcenauts is a very interesting one. All of the kind of marketing material, the trailers and such, and of course VOD. How could we forget VOD? It really got me hyped up, and I don't think the game releasing with a roadmap was a bad thing. I don't think that was a bad thing at all. I think that gave us faith in the fact that this game is going to be looked after for a long time. And we're coming up to the point now where we're going to get genuinely like entirely new content, right? It's playing on screen, don't worry. It's black in the studio, but it's playing on the screen.
I can see it.
I've got it. We've got it,
yeah. Looking at this list of the games that have reviewed very highly on Upload, I don't think, Ian, you have got many that you would actually love. So there are things like the Climb.
Sorry, please. I want to read up the whole. I want to know the whole list to see how many I would play because I won't play Larcenauts.
Here's the whole list of everything that is has reviewed well. So there's Mare that released in January. Hitman 3, The Climb 2, Hyperdash, which I actually could not remember anything about, Cosmodread, Floor Plan 2, which is very much a Jamie game, Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife, Demio, definitely an Ian game, Carve Snowboarding, Larcenauts, Chess Club, and Sniper Elite VR. That's the list. That's maybe Chess Club for you, but I don't think you've jumped into it yet. Maybe.
No, yeah, I like chess, but I haven't tried that one. The ones that stood out to me are Demio and we'll get to I Expect You to Die in a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Just as a comparison, these were the nominees for the best games last year. All of them.
That's a good point.
Incredible. You'd say quite like, I don't know, nearing AAA, right? Whereas most of these games on this list, as Jamie pointed out earlier, it's mostly kind of indie devs, right?
So if you're on audio, sorry, so just as a reminder, our nominees for best game last year were Half-Life Alyx, Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, Population 1, Star Wars Squadrons, Until You Fall, and The Room VR: A Dark Matter. I can't believe that's so good that you've just brought that up, because I guess I don't think the list so far this year is anywhere near as strong as this list of contenders.
Well, you don't have Half-Life Alyx anchoring it, sure, but and of course Saints and Sinners there is such a big
and Star
thing.
Wars and Population.
Star
every
Star
single
Wars
one of
was
these.
A huge thing. The only one there that I don't like is Population 1. So
yeah.
So I hate the thing that really bugs me here is we just got finished with this discussion about these devs who have been 5 or 6 years into VR development now, rolling out massive updates to their products and upping the price. And like, do we put those on our best game of the year consideration because they've been out? Those games have been out for 2, 3, 4, even 5 years now. And now they're completely different than their original incarnations. And would we even consider them on our best of year?
I don't think they're completely
updates,
different.
Right?
Is the I don't think they're completely different is the thing to me. Yeah, we would have an evolving game or best updates list for sure. But like, I mean, you can't really say like Pistol Whip is completely different. It's definitely expanded and grown, but it's still the base game. And if you didn't enjoy Pistol Whip when it came out in 2019, you're still not going to enjoy the stuff they've added to it since then, right?
That's fair, but again, what we were just commenting on here was how kind of Rockstar the 2020 nominees were with Half-Life Alyx, this game that's built behind the scenes for 4 or 5 years, and Saints and Sinners, this thing that kind of just got unleashed on the market out of nowhere. No early access, it's just boom, it's there. And Half-Life Alyx, boom, it's there. Squadron, same thing. And this year we're getting this sense of like games that have been just refined in various ways over the years that got reviewed in another era of VR, and they're just in a completely different category compared to these things that were developed behind the scenes.
Yeah. And of course, not to sound like a broken record, but there's been a pandemic, and obviously, people were affected in 2020, but these games were clearly, basically finished by then, right? Most of them released in the early part of 2020. I think Population 1 was later, maybe?
Pop 1 and Squadrons were definitely towards the end of the year. Alyx and Walking Dead were at the start. Until You Fall had been in early access for as long as one can remember. So that was a largely done deal in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, these were not affected by teams not being able to get into the studios and stuff like that. Whereas
as big as games released this year would have been, for sure.
Yeah. So let's think about games that have been put off. So there's After the Fall that have been pushed.
That's still to come.
There's Lone Echo 2 still to come, but been pushed. Which other games are still to come? I don't know if Resident Evil 4 can be counted.
No, Resi 4 is
coming
meant
this
to be
year?
coming this year.
Yeah.
But I mean, we haven't heard about it since like May or April or whatever. So
yeah, I think the best is yet to come with a lot of this. I mean, for me, it would have to be like Hitman. If these were the list that I read out, if these were the only games that we just had to deal with and no other massive games were released, it'd be Hitman 3, Demeo, Last Knots, and Sniper Elite VR. For me, it would have to be those.
Yeah, I think Hitman is definitely the biggest VR game of the year so far. But as we just saw some up in the chat, I think it was Onike said that Squadrons is a AAA game that just happens to have VR support. And this is kind of the same sense. Like, I don't think I would give it that consideration because, and Wolveraza says it here, the gamepad implementation, they say is tragic. I think it's a bit better than tragic, but I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff in Hitman, and I think it's a great start to building on, for sure.
Doom
and
3 should be in there, apparently.
Nope. And I still hope to see, like, I hope that, Sony does his exclusivity deal and a year later we get the PC version gets kind of like motion controls as well. That would be really good to see. I'm just going back to what Ian was saying, though. I think it's really interesting, the idea of adding evolving games to like the list of the best games of the year. But I still think even like from like Pistol Whip to Space Pirate Trainer to Waltz, I still wouldn't put any of them in this list, though. Like, I'd imagine you're probably different, especially on the Pistol Whip approach, because there is probably like 2 or 3. Well, there have been like 2 or 3 genuinely meaningful additions to Pistol Whip in the past couple of months, right?
Yeah, the modifiers. Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I guess maybe a game that kind of culminates in all of that is something we're going to talk about in a bit, which I completely forgot to mention, is Township Tale, which is still evolving right now, and I will definitely want to be thinking about putting it in the official Game of the Year list, even though technically we're only really talking about the Quest version, which is an official release that you have to pay for, but is still very much an alpha build of a game that's getting new updates every couple of months. And again, to Ian's point, like if a Township had released in 2016 and we'd all been like paying attention, there's no way we would have put it on a Game of the Year list back then, because it would have been this small, humble thing. But it has now grown out over the years to something that is huge and expansive and is like one of the most important games in VR today, for sure.
Yeah, 2 things I want to bring up into this discussion are Beat Saber and No Man's Sky. So we were sort of down on Beat Saber popping up onto like Game of the Year list 3 years in a row from like all these people that like aren't paying attention to VR and the VR market, and just like, what is everyone playing? Oh, Beat Saber? Okay, let's throw Beat Saber up on the Game of the Year list. And it's like the game is fundamentally the exact same game that it was 4 years ago that it is, or 3 years ago that it is now. And sort of rolling everyone that actually plays VR in and out on a daily or weekly basis, kind of rolling their eyes at Beat Saber getting all this attention year after year, when there's lots of other innovation to kind of uphold and point out in the market. I don't think that's where we are right now. I don't think it's the same situation with these evolving games. And that's why I'm also mentioning No Man's Sky, where the game you played when No Man's Sky came out initially for flat screens is not the game that was out when VR support was added. And it's not the game that's there now with multiple, regular massive updates to their fundamental infrastructure there. And so like we need to maybe consider a game like No Man's Sky again and see where that sits.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And No Man's Sky is definitely the best example because it has been so generous and so thorough and so frequent with its updates. I think it's on something like 6 updates maybe this year or something ridiculously crazy. And each one has added a significant new element to the game. I guess it comes down more to the idea of, we're kind of adopting what the gaming industry does here. Of every year, it's like in the Oscars, in film industry, you have the Oscars and the concept of best film winner there. In the gaming industry, you have the concept of game of the year, and that's what the Game Awards and IGN and everyone else give out, and that's kind of the model we've kind of adopted more now. I guess you kind of it's strange because it doesn't seem fair not to give a game like No Man's Sky that recognition, but at the same time you do want to pick something that is wholly new in the year that kind of crystallizes or perfectly distills everything about VR design that year and give that its moment in the sun. So I don't know, maybe there's some way to have evolving game and best game but have them on the same kind of level of cadence, or I don't know, it's a really hard thing to pick apart. Because the other thing about No Man's Sky is then when do you stop giving it Game of the Year, and also there's so much before that came. There's years and years of updates to build on. Do you also bring that into the fold, or do you specifically look at the 6 it did this year? So it's a really, really complicated issue, and I'm glad we're talking about it because I just hadn't thought about it that much.
H3 VR, hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades is the one I always bring up to you guys every year for the last 5 years. Where that game is constantly adding new mechanics, and like they've got crazy new locomotion systems in that game that were just added in the last month. And like I'm seeing some of the videos that are popping around Twitter where people are like flying across levels now and sniping people from the sky, and like it's a different game with each update. Even if to Jamie's point, like they're still if you're watching it really closely, they all feel incremental, very very small to the original intent.
Yeah,
I would argue that you shouldn't put just updated older games in best games. I think that should be its own category for sure. At the same level, like towards the end of the ceremony, to kind of right behind this, because they should be recognized, but I think they should be recognized individually and separately, because there are so many of them. There's so many of them, and it's been a big thing for this year. Like Ian was saying, it's been a year of people kind of fine tuning and making things better. But I do think it should be separate, personally.
Yeah,
I like this framing from GamerCat saying, or Meow Meow, the new game of the year, that should be one award. But also I think best game in VR is like another. I like that framing of just what is the best way to spend your time in VR this year. And if you're looking at, I don't know, 10 or 12 games, yes, we could pick one out there, but we kind of honor all 12 games by even just including them on the list when that's kind of the way you frame that particular award.
But then that is just getting on to the idea of just having a best 25 VR games list, right? Which is what we've got. And that does reflect that No Man's Sky has climbed that list with more updates and more fixes and everything like that. Larcenauts wasn't on the list when it launched. And then as the first 2 or 3 updates came in, we did start thinking about putting it on there.
Recognizing it,
yeah. I mean, maybe it's worth like, as you do the game of the year, you also publish it in tandem with like the definitive end of 2021 edition of the best stuff you can play. But it's definitely something to think about. Just getting like back on track with the idea, we need to talk about Demo, and I lay the floor out to you two, because I know you two are so big on it, and obviously I loved it too. I gave it 5 stars. I just wanted to give the spotlight to some other games.
I like talking about that game, and it's it's tough for me because I still have yet to beat the first campaign, and I have yet to be able to sort of round someone up for a 2-hour session in the second campaign. And it so underscores to me, like, even me as this VR writer, this person who is willing to put on the headset at very odd hours to go try something new, I can't round up people to go and spend that 2-hour session to get through a full campaign there. And like I've put the call out on Twitter a couple times, hey, who wants to go play? And no one's popping up. It's so hard to schedule a 2-hour session for a VR game. It's like it's just you're talking about like a niche within a niche within a niche of people who are willing to devote that time at any given moment. And I think it's, I don't know, to Jamie's point, when you're looking at games that push the medium forward in new ways, you're talking Space Pirate Trainer DX with arena scale, and you're talking Demio with giving people a 2-hour campaign that they actually want to go through with friends. Those are things we never had in VR before, and you're talking about a small number of people that can actually go and do it with you.
One thing, like, and again, like, to that point, and building off maybe some of kind of the harder things about Demio is, I really did think the mid-game save would have been here by now, and I could be wrong, but I haven't seen an update that's added that in, and that would really, really help with that idea. And I think that's a shame, and I think if it doesn't get here by the end of the year, that might weigh quite heavily on my mind when we're choosing a Game of the Year option, because my assumption was that it was probably like a month or two out, and it needs to be here. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's only a shame because we all have so much fun playing this game in the sessions that we've had, and in terms of the actual standout breakthrough VR experience that feels new and fresh this year, I still say it is the social element of Demio, of in the middle of a pandemic, all of us sitting together around a table or hovering above a table. One of us is giant, one of us is tiny, and we're interacting with a board game in a way that we genuinely never have been able to do before. And Demio, to my mind, there are other games like Brass Tactics and stuff like that, but to my mind, Demio is still easily the most seamless and best of those experiences.
It's so easy to get it right. Like, and they've just totally smashed it out of the park. It's for what it is, it looks the most polished and like one of the most gorgeous games for me. It gives me the experience of, during like the past 2 years, I've been thinking, oh, I wish I could get, this board game that I could sit down and play with people and, engage in basically exactly the same way that Demio does it. To me, it's the perfect board game, and they brought it to VR in a way that's actually meaningful to VR. It's it's so good, isn't it? Chess Club VR, you can kind of compare those, right? Where it is the whole board game thing, and they have the animated kind of. Do they have like a medieval?
They have the kind of wizard's chest, the pieces coming alive if you want that, and then they have the kind of classic, just straight up pieces that you move option as well.
So that's like an okay implementation of a board game in VR, but Demio takes it to this other level that is just so much more immersive. I don't want to always say immersive, but immersive, and it's so much cooler. It's so cool. You cannot deny it. Everyone fell in love with it when it released, and that love is still there. It's not easily forgotten. This experience is not easily forgotten, and that's a big thing for me. I forgot about most of these games on the list.
People in the comments mentioning I could go into a Discord to find people to play with or do a public game, and I get that. Those are both actually really good suggestions. It's just it's one of these things I want to play with friends and people I know too. Rather than randos.
I totally agree, because it's without sounding too weird, it's an intimate experience at the end of the day. It is 4 people in a basement, and committing to a couple of hours, and I definitely think it works best with friends, because it just what's the word? Like it just gets emotions out of you that you will only get otherwise in a physical
real life
meeting. And that was like, as we were playing, even as we were playing with the developers before the game came out, that was just so abundantly clear. And it is genuinely special, and it's metaverse, this social network that this is the best, for my money, this is the best social experience in VR and the most powerful way of communicating how you can close that distance with this tech.
To me, even with the other games coming out this year, I would give this my vote.
Okay.
By far. It's by far.
I love both
favorite.
of what you were saying. Yeah, I think we've got a lead here. We've got a game to beat for
Did we
for
just
Game of
spoil
the Year. Yeah.
our Game of the Year awards?
Well, so a lot of people in the comments are talking about Resident Evil 4, and I love the theory.
Yeah.
I want to remind people that didn't at the last 2 Connects, didn't Facebook launch the Star Wars Vader games like at the event? Like, didn't they launch
the
like
Vader
today.
Immortal?
Yeah.
Second episode launched during it.
And so like this year Facebook Connect is held 3 days before Halloween, and the commenters are pointing out that what if Resident Evil just suddenly dropped right after Mark Zuckerberg's keynote?
Yeah, that's a great point. Because
here's an idea. Should it be in the most evolved games list?
Yeah, I was thinking that. That's interesting, because I think if you look into the holiday lineup, and again, we always go back to the idea of what is a VR strategy against a traditional console strategy. But right now, Facebook is leaning more towards that traditional console strategy. And you look at their holiday lineup, and right now it is Resident Evil and After the Fall, which are 2 games that are very, very similar to start with. And is there going to be anything else, or are they going to do what they've done for the rest of the year, which is play their cards really close to their chest, and we'll hear about something exciting maybe a week before it comes, like at the start of December. They're like, oh, by the way, the sequel to I don't know. What's the Asgard's Wrath is out or something like that.
Oh, damn, yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments talking about gamepad, and I want to, of the list of highly rated games, was Hitman the only one that was a gamepad game?
I think so.
This year?
Yeah, I mean, Mayor is using the controls, but just in a kind of point and click kind of way, not in a these are your hands kind of way.
I'm curious, I guess, from, Sony would have access to this data, but I'm curious, like, if they have the data of how tiring it is to constantly do motion controls. Like, I wonder if they have any data that shows that the VR games you play with gamepad are actually tend to be the games you spend the most amount of time in over a single session.
Well, it'll be telling, based entirely on the fact of if PSVR 2 or PS5 VR supports DualSense, right? Because if it doesn't, then that's your answer right there.
When I jumped into Township Tale the other week with Jamie, and he was like, oh yeah, let's go beat up this rock guy. Unfortunately, there was a bug and he was unbeatable. So I was whacking him with a sword over and over. And with a Township Tale, you have to really hit. You have to really mean it.
Yeah.
The day after, my arm was aching. It was aching so hard.
I love the idea you have this stick right above your head and like looking at this rock monster and you're like, I'm going to kill you. And then you bring it crashing down on his head over and over again in this extraordinarily violent scene.
This little so-and-so would not die. So yeah, my arm was hurting. I just want to bring up what Adam Hartzell said earlier in the chat, which is interesting because he has mentioned 2 games that we have not even thought about really. VR Skater, which I think Jamie has tried out, and Cooking Simulator, which, to be fair, is a great shout.
That's an interesting one.
It's just that we haven't reviewed it yet.
Yeah, no, we haven't reviewed Cooking Sim, and you need a good machine to get the most out of Cooking Sim as well, as we discovered when we streamed it the other week. In terms of VR Skater, I can totally see why Adam Hartzell was saying that. The game's not like complete; it's in early access, so I wouldn't go that route. But I would transfer what he's talking about onto carved snowboarding, which for me takes the same idea, but I found it a much more accessible version of Skate VR or VR Skater. And I love Car VR. I hope we get to see more of that as well in the future. Probably not. It might end up on the nominees just for the sake of spacing out the list if it gets to that point. But
Yeah.
I think if After the Fall or Resident Evil or Lone Echo 2 is a hit, then that's probably one that will fall off of that nominations list pretty quickly.
Cool. So basically, Demio wins, right? Is that how we're going to round this out?
So
far.
I think if we were sitting here right now and it was December, as much as I love Last Noughts, I don't really see how I could put up much of a fight. And it's a shame because I was hoping we could get Fracked in this list, but Fracked is just far too
quite
short.
a few people mentioned Fracked and said it would be perfect.
Yeah, obviously we didn't have a podcast last week, so we didn't spend much time talking about it. I think it's really, really fantastic and fun to play. And I've been playing Doom Eternal on flat screen right now, but they just don't.
Our commenters have brought up Ragnarok. Have either of you tried Ragnarok yet?
No, I have not.
I'm a Viking King. Come on. No, that's a no. That's you guys didn't say yes. You guys have not played it. Go play Ragnarok. Come on.
Okay.
Oh man.
We've got a long weekend. Maybe we will.
Oh yeah.
We lied. No, we might do it. No, we might. We might.
I made the camera come to me and out won't leave me. I'm sorry, guys.
I'm a Viking King. Hello, everyone. Okay, that about wraps up our discussion.
Opsar says he wishes there was they wish there was a demo for Demio. Sorry to interrupt. Have trouble imagining myself playing a card game in VR. It's not really a card game. You use cards as one element of it if you want to, but it's much more of a dice actual board game than it is like a
moving
like a
your
Hearthstone
around.
or whatever it is that Valve made that was like Hearthstone
or Magic. I don't know.
doesn't deserve to be named.
Nope.
Okay.
I think it's
also Microsoft Flight Sim does not make the list.
It was last year, and none of us can run it, so it's not happening.
Yeah.
PokerStar VR is never going to
run it as thing, but that's another updated game. They've been adding a lot of stuff to it.
Yeah, that's true. And I would love nothing more than I would love nothing more than to be able to dive in and get fully immersed and tell you that it was one of the best VR experiences out there. But even with the huge optimization update they did in the wake of the Xbox release, it's still not doing
too much
for us. So
yeah. All right. Anyway, let's move on to our impressions and reviews. Earlier this week, Ian posted his review of I Expect You to Die 2 by Shell Games, the most popular developer of this podcast today. And by the sounds of it, you liked it a lot. I think it's very much your kind of jam, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, I adored it. It was a lot of fun. I called it a really great game. I think it was just shy of being essential. I thought about the essential label with it a little bit because it's such a cornerstone experience to have this escape room done so well. So escape rooms, puzzles that you can do from like a seated experience and reach out and grab things in the room or manipulate an object that's right in front of you. Is such like it's a good fit for VR and such a great idea. But if you're going to look for kind of years of development experience and someone who does this right, you're going to look to Shell Games to see a quality version of this experience. And of course, I Expect You to Die 2 is a sequel to a very early in VR's development game. So I think they were the first game was out officially at the end of 2016 with the touch controller launch, and that's a full 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 5 years here, almost 4.5 if you count off the last few months of this year since the original launched. And what I was just struck by in this game is just how much depth there was to everything in your environment. So in the very first level, we've actually got walkthroughs if people get stuck, and those are actually getting some good reviews right now from people who are finding, getting stuck like I did. I actually got stuck on this level during one of the things, and actually that's the video tutorial that's getting the most views right now. People who got stuck on this level looking for the way to get through. But basically, there's this quote from Jesse Shell in one of Jamie's interviews this year where he talks about something I also heard from the Job Simulator devs. It's the same exact concept, where if you play test your VR game enough, you will see all the different things that creative people come up with to do in your virtual world. And you as a developer have to decide how many of those things you're going to support. And, like, for example, in this game, in this level, there are bottles that you have to use that are part of your puzzle solving. And if you drop one of those bottles on the ground, your puzzle will not be solvable. Like if it breaks along the ground, it will not be solvable. So on this level in particular, those bottles do not break. On another level, there's a bottle that if it breaks, it kills you. And the rules are different across the two levels for how the world reacts to bottles dropping on the ground. And in both instances, I was pleasantly surprised by the way they chose to have those bottles act on each of the levels. Like, I don't want my puzzle solving bottle to break in one level, and on the other level, when the bottle broke and killed me, immediately after I died, I went, of course, I should have known better. I should have caught that what that was going to kill me. And that's just the thought that had to go into making those two decisions was had to come from like play testing over and over and over again. And it's just so apparent to me how much care went into getting this right. And every level, so there's only 6 levels in this game, and I can totally understand. Another one of the quotes that I saw Jamie had from Shell is it takes time to develop and work through these intricate puzzles. And this is something, you go play this game, you're going to die, and you're going to die a lot. And you're going to have to go into these moments of introspection where you spend 20 minutes even just sitting there looking around at your surroundings thinking, what are the rules of this world that are facing me, and how can I use them to my advantage? What is the trick that I need to pull to get out of this predicament? And that's absolute magic from Shell Games with I Expect You to Die Too, to kind of give you. The game also sort of switches back and forth between those 20 moments, those 20 minutes of introspection, and holy crap, I'm going to die right now. What do I do? You got to think fast on your feet. So it's got both of those elements where you do have to kind of like really think about the whole world around you, and then other moments where it's just you got to think really fast on your feet. And the fact that it does both of these, you're going to spend, I feel like an idiot that when like some of these levels took me more than an hour before I realized what stupid thing I needed to do. Like, not what stupid thing, how stupid I was, and what I needed to do to actually get through the level. And multiple times in this game, what happened was I actually reached out to Shell Games on one of the things on this level that I got stuck on, that people are obviously coming to watch our walkthrough video to find out wherever they're stuck. I had to reach out to them to find out what was the thing. And as soon as they explained the solution to me, I went, of course. I thought of that. I was looking at that area of the map. I had briefly thought about this solution and just pushed it out of my brain and didn't see it to its conclusion. And like, that's the mark of a great puzzle game. When someone explains the solution to you and you go, oh, of course, I'm an idiot. That's what I was supposed to do. And it's so darn frustrating because I thought about it. I literally thought about the solution a few minutes before, but I didn't see it through. I didn't take it the extra step and do the whole thing. And I don't know. There's only, like I said, there's only 6 levels, but if each one takes you half an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how stupid you feel, that's a fully fledged game. So yeah, I would love to see more puzzles. I would love to see them add to this game over time. But still, as it stands, at six puzzles that take you that length of time, this is a fully formed package. And just they've done such incredible work to play test this and get this ready for people. I think everyone is going to be pleasantly surprised with just, you'll get stuck. Yes, you'll die, but it's still such satisfying puzzles.
Wonderful. And it's out on all platforms when?
Yep. It's on all platforms right now. It launched on the same day on all the headsets. And yeah, I played this through on Quest, and it was a great experience on Quest, but it should be on all the other headsets. And it's obviously like a forward-facing experience, so it should work well if you're in that kind of a setup where you're only facing forward. Yes, there's a few times where you kind of need to turn around slightly, but there's no situations where you need to do a full 360 and look directly behind you and interact with a whole lot of stuff behind you. And this is obviously one of the most comfortable experiences you will have in VR, because there's one level that kind of moves you around a little bit, but it doesn't even, it's very slight what it does to you. So this is an extremely comfortable experience, and it's played seated, and you've got the kind of gravity gloves type telekinetic power to interact with faraway objects, and it works pretty well.
They really capitalize on the accessibility of this game as well, though, don't they? I think they're really proud of it, especially in this game.
Yeah. I love it.
Cool.
I wonder. Yeah, I can't wait to see. I want to say I Expect You to Die 3, and there's a little teaser there at the end of the credits that's saying there will be more coming.
Oh, yeah, that's exciting to me. I want to go back in, and I want to play as much of that as possible, because it's a very. I loved what you were saying about the bottles. I think that's a really cool observation, and I want to pick up that when we talk about Township Tale in a bit, but. It's just such a pure, wholesome VR game from back in the 2016 days. It's still full of that love and adoration for the platform, and like trying to find things that are new with it. That's what I Expect You to Die is all about at the end of the day, isn't it? Like solutions that you could only really do in satisfying ways in VR. So it's really cool to see it back in that sense. You've changed the image, which I guess means you want me to become Captain Toonhead.
You have solved that puzzle. So yeah, Jamie posted on UploadVR.com his impressions of Captain Toonhead versus the punks from outer space. This was announced like a month or two ago, and I think people are really hyped about this. Jamie, what were your impressions?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The first time I saw the trailer for this game earlier this year, I think, and the kind of humor it was going for, I knew the humor wasn't for me. It's kind of whole like it's a wave shooter that when you shoot people, the main character goes nice, and to me that is just insufferably irritating, and I just cannot get on board with it. But it's humor. It works differently for different people. If you think saying nice in a funny way is good, or making jokes about burritos exploding people, have at it. I'll just get past that stuff, because beneath it is actually a pretty fun, interesting, and incredibly well polished wave shooter / tower defense combo. So it's all kind of stuff you've seen before. Yeah, it's a tower defense game first and foremost. So you're going to have enemies walking towards your kind of base, where there is a certain amount of these little people you have to save and make sure they don't reach. And then along the way, you have certain towers that you can build on and build your sentry guns. And then also you have a dual wielding option yourself to kind of contribute and kind of take down enemies with. And that's all, like I said, that's all stuff we've kind of seen before. And actually, if this was 2018 or 2017, I'd probably right now be saying, oh man, another one of these games, because that was pretty much all that was coming out for VR around those early days. And I in my preview, I said, like, I pretty much ran out of things to say about this type of game, because they were just coming out every other week, and it was all we were reviewing, and it was just a nightmare. But now we've kind of had a nice little break from it. And I actually think this kind of comes out at quite a nice time to kind of revisit it and remember why so many people made it, because it did work so well for VR. And there's pretty much everything you'd want to be there to pull you through the campaign. So it's done in a campaign way. It's a story-driven game. There's really cool upgrades so that every time you do really well on a mission, you go back to base, upgrade every one of your towers. There's really fun presentations of the game that only VR can do. So you have these dual wielding pistols, and on the end of one of them is like a little nodding dog toy. You can see it on the screen over here. And it's so cool to have that at the end of your gun. It's such a nice little touch, and it really does nod along as you wave it around. And I got enamored by that. And then also there's fun little backstory bits of this flame cannon you see here is powered by hot sauce, which I think is pretty. Even though I'm not a fan of the game's humor, I think those are fun little twists. But it's you probably know the story behind it already. I don't feel like I'd have to play too much more or see too much more to settle on where I'd be with a review. And it's out later this year and looking like it could be quite good in a fun, forgettable fun sort of way, I think.
Forgettable fun.
Well, that's fine.
I love tower defense. Cool. Do you like tower defense games?
I love tower defense. Me and Zeena play Pixel Junk Monsters quite often.
I was about to say I don't like them, but I love that game. It makes me
really fantastic.
There are some games, so I don't judge a game by whether it makes me happy or sad or whatever. I judge it by whether it makes my heart hurt through getting so worked up and frustrated by not being able to do it, or if I fall asleep feeling so comfortable playing it. And tower defense ones are definitely, they make my heart hurt a lot.
So we don't get to play a lot of Pixel Junk Monsters.
Yeah, I need to cool down.
But yeah, no, I love it. And in terms of the strategy in this game, it is there. I've played the first 5 levels, and I've had moments where I've had to rush and change up my tactics, but I've never got anything less than a perfect score in the levels so far. And I think that's, unless there's a hard difficulty mode that unlocks or they add that in at a later date, I don't know if it's really going to push me much more. So we'll see how it works out in the end. But that's another all platforms release, I think, later this year.
Wonderful. So moving on from that, Jamie, you posted, what was it, a couple weeks or a month ago, when a Township Tale released on Quest, you gave a review in progress. Is that right?
Sort of. It was me saying here's what I think about it so far, but I think I need a lot longer with this game to arrive at any sort of definitive decision about it. Was kind of the vibe, and I'm kind of there now because my review's the Quest version of my review, and again, this will very much be an evolving thing, I'm sure, but the Quest version of my review went up about an hour ago. It's hard to know where to start with a Township Tale, and I'm going to be preaching to the choir on a lot of this stuff because I'm sure lots of people in chat have played loads and loads and loads of it and probably know a lot more than me, because even after 20 to 25 hours of the game now, there's still new things I'm learning every day, because it is just in one part a staggeringly deep MMO RPG, and in another part it's really, really terrible at explaining how to play it. So there's kind of two halves to pick aside, the frustrating stuff and that kind of depth. Where I want to start is, we were just talking about I Expect You to Die 2, and in Ian's review of that game, he said that in one level you can't break the bottles because they're intrinsic to the puzzle and they don't want to make it unsolvable. In another level, if you break a bottle, you die. And there's that kind of really interesting, considerate adaptability to the design. And for better or worse, Township Tale is not that game. Township Tale is full on, let's make this a realistic experience. Let's play by real world rules, and let's have people feeling like they're really embodying jobs like being a blacksmith, or being, a miner, or going out to fight monsters in the world, and having, playing some part of a community. And from a physics perspective, it's really, really interesting. So you're doing things like actually putting your back into cutting down trees and splitting up logs and then gathering them up with your hands, or, taking a pickaxe to a rock and getting the ores, and then even to the point where you're going to the blacksmith, and there's a degree of physicality in going to the furnace and putting in fuel and using the fan and picking up the blade and then hitting a hammer in the blade with the blade after it's been in a forge. And all of that is really clever, involved, intricate stuff that comes with an unmistakable degree of clumsiness. That means stuff like, so going back to the "I expect you to die too" thing and how polished it is. If you try and like do that kind of force grab thing that most VR games can do, where you pick something up from a distance. Let's say you try and do that with a lump of wood in a Township Tale, and that lump of wood is in a pile of all other lumps of wood. You grab it, and you will shoot off like 6 other splinters of wood way across the map, and you will just watch it fly, and you'll be like, well, I'm never going to see that again. And then like maybe like 3 or 4 hours later, you'll be strolling along a path, and you'll just look down, and you'll just say, oh, look, here's all that wood that I lost earlier. Which, in some senses I love, because it is just this hilariously slapstick thing. But at the same time, it's you can tell this is a VR game with physics that are really pushing up against the limit of what we can do right now. And in that sense, it is still very much an evolving game. And even though we're reviewing it today, like I said, it's going to be an entirely different thing in a year. There's going to be more areas. They're going to have refined more of those mechanics, ironed out more of those bugs. But there's enough there right now that you can kind of tell that if they deliver on all of that, on expanding and refining, this is going to be one of the most important and interesting VR games to release of the past couple of years, because the physicality of those tasks is really different and engaging and fun, and it gives you a sense of achievement in some ways, like you are actually doing some of this work. It's funny, I always think of the Simpsons jokes that they've made over the years of, virtual lawn mowing simulator and everything like that, when Bart and Lisa don't actually want to do the actual lawn mowing. I think that's so funny, because this really is that sort of game of like, you're going and putting in hard work into things to build out a little town, and it's like, well, you could just do that in real life. And the other great thing about it is the social aspect. That's the key massive part of this, because if you play a Township Tale by yourself, which is entirely possible, you're going to be grinding out a lot of the resources. That's going to take hours, where it could take minutes if there are like 8 of you and everything like that. And that's really kind of what the game is built on, this idea of mysticism that you can solve through hard work and community. So lots of the areas in the game take a lot of effort to get to. There's a really deep mine system where it's procedurally generated, and every time you go down another level, it gets a little harder, but you might get better resources. And there's just so much to discover in all of that, unlike any other VR game. And it really captures that sense of discovery. Every time you find something new, you feel like you've earned it through that hard work and through braving the combat and everything like that. So, it's kind of a scatterbrained review, because it's a scatterbrained game at the end of the day. There are just so many different elements to it, and trying to pin down any one piece, knowing that they're always constantly changing, and that, the game does such a bad job of explaining any of it to you, and that it's an entirely different experience if you play it with 1 player against 8 players. It's incredibly difficult to pin down. But A Township Tale is on this incredible journey, and it has been for a long time now, and it's still, even though it's been a long time, it's still really early on. And the reason I call it a future VR great in the making is because I see all the signs of it getting there one day. And genuinely, when it does get there, I think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. There are no other VR games that I've played until 1 a.m. There are no other VR games that I've played until 1 a.m. And the other day, testing out the VR Power battery pack, I played for 6 or 7 hours straight, and there's nothing else in the medium that I've done that with. So it's right now it's a trepidatious great, because there's still all these bugs. There's still so much of the world to flesh out. It's very much in alpha. But if you want to get on the ground floor and see potentially one of the most important VR games, building day by day, absolutely go for it.
Jamie, combat.
Oh yeah, people are saying, I saw that in the comments. Combat,
frustrating.
Yeah, it's this kind of thing where it's not on that kind of level of, it's neither the brilliantly refined arcade action of Until You Fall. It's a long way from that. And then it's not far enough along on the kind of Boneworks or Walking Dead side that you get a sense of the heft and everything you'll need to do to really land an impact. So what you end up with is this kind of weird melee system that's not quite at the waggle, but you are having to put in like genuine strokes into your like sword swings and everything like that. But they kind of compensate for some of the like kind of clumsiness of it, just with the fact that enemies like really decimate your health bar when they hit you. Your health bar gets huge chunks off. And there's not like much depth in terms of your technique and your defense and everything like that yet. But the reason I didn't actually mention it so much in my review is because I do really feel like Alter is very aware of that, Alter being the developer. And that's going to be one of the key things I think we see carried forward for them to focus on in the next couple of updates and everything like that.
So here's an interesting...
Sorry,
go for it, Ian.
The only thing I want to add is this thing that I've brought up on a couple previous podcasts where we talked about the force pull. And I think it's just really important to come back to, especially in the context of your really meaty review on this that really summarized. You called it a scatterbrain review, but I loved your take on this, where you're talking about how great it's going to be in a couple of years, and it's so hard. It feels scary to say that a game is evolving and going to get there in a couple of years, but we've been at this kind of long enough to know that the VR technology is going to get better, and there's moments where certain games will intersect with VR tech at the right moment. And you talked about how this needs a couple more generations of Quest hardware to get the Quest version of the game to the PC version. And the thing I just want to throw in there and add to it that we've talked about before, and very, very few of our commenters or listeners will have experienced this, but as soon as the headsets have quality eye tracking, all of the force pulls in every game should see massive, massive, massive upgrades. And so what that's going to do is anything your eyes are targeted at, the headset will know that your eye is looking at that. And so when you combine that with a grabby motion, the exact item you want is going to come into your hand. And that's going to dramatically change the mechanics in a game like this, a game like I Expect You to Die, Alex, and all the other games that have that mechanic.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I want to, I am looking forward to seeing it on... It's going to continue to be the most successful on Quest, like everything else is. And it's, it will be the most important when Quest 3 comes along and that intersection that Ian's talking about happens. But I hope they bring it to PSVR and more accessible stuff in the meantime, so you can kind of get an early glimpse of that without having to get into the whole PC VR ecosystem, because that comes with its own challenges as well. But yeah, so it is I put a great on the review, but it is a kind of watch this space great, I guess, and it will be interesting. With everything we've talked about today, when we get to December and start talking about Game of the Year, it'll be interesting to see if we're talking about putting it here or there or whatever. That'll be really interesting discussion.
So between now and then, and this is something that I've mentioned before with another game, and I don't think you guys like this too much in terms of looking at games. But in terms of kids coming in, that is a massive I don't know, problem. I'm gonna say problem for many people, that they come in and they ruin an experience that people don't want kids coming in and screaming or being
word I
over
saw in
the
our
top.
comments was squeakers, I think was what they were referring to.
Was that what it was?
Yeah. And so this is a huge make or break sort of issue for this game, because for example with Rec Room could have been above and beyond, but ultimately it's now classed as a kids game that if you go in, you will be harassed and you will have
kids
screaming in your face.
Harassed by children.
But it's
adults going out onto a playground. The kids should harass you, type thing. It's a weird. But the thing I want to add there is Half and Half. That was the game that had this situation where by default the voice interaction is squeaky voice, right? Like you cannot have an actual person-to-person voice conversation in Half-Life, and they built Half and Half, and they built the entire game around that mechanic where you literally cannot interact with other people. And then our other experiences like The Tempest, where you can't talk to other people in the experience at all. It's a 1-2 group voice conversation, and the person who actually has the power of speaking can kind of control the narrative of what's going around you. So I would very much like to see voice off by default in multiplayer games going forward, to your point, Zeena.
But you can also, with Township, one of you're saying this because there was actually a funny video on Reddit we saw earlier.
I was literally going to bring that up.
Yeah, there was the first half of a Facebook introductory video where they said, "Oh yeah, sorry, it's 13s and over," and the woman on the video said, "Sorry, little ones," and then it cuts to Township, and there's like 8 children with squeaky voices being like, "Come on, let's go."
But look at this.
The thing about Township is you can be very selective about it. So you start a private server. And you invite your friends, or you go on a Discord, and
it's a shame for the people who don't have 8 or 7 other friends.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That is very true. And it's an interesting issue. It's not quite in the Echo VR territory because you're not thrown into a lobby with randos where you're like, okay, I immediately decided I don't want to play this game anymore. You do get some say in it with Township Tale.
Yeah, but yes, you can have private servers. Yes, you can do all these things, but unfortunately, I think it's starting to get a reputation, at least like by seeing people in the chat and by seeing memes like that on Reddit, and on Twitter. Unfortunately, I think people might be attaching it to this game, and I don't want that to happen because again, it has way more settings to stop that. I'm just saying, fingers crossed, it can grow naturally in the way that it should, and not be ruined by this horrid phenomenon of children taking over your personal space. But yeah, so that about wraps up our thoughts on Township Tale.
Yeah.
Cool. And so, that brings us to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're here live or if you're joining us on a streaming platform. We really appreciate it. You can see, you can read all of the stories and the reviews and impressions over at UploadVR.com. Join us every Thursday, same time, same place. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. See y'all later.